Welcome to Talking Giants Player Profile Preview. Got two players today, one offensive, one defensive. That's how it works. Player Profile Previews, two players in an episode every weekday until game week. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick, who's making a bunch of weird hand signals. You can finally see all the weird stuff he does now that we're doing video. We're presented by John Boy Media. Justin, how are you doing? You ready for Kaden Smith?
Ooh, Kayden Smith, PPP, player profile preview. We are doing this 5 days a week. It's the most exciting time of the year. Unfortunately, I feel like at this point, the Giants are probably not even meeting to do training camp yet, and there's not a lot of things happening, but we're happening, and we're going.
Let's do it. Kaden Smith. Kaden Smith is 6'5", 252 pounds. He's 23 years old. He was picked by the San Francisco 49ers in last year's draft in the 6th round, pick 176. Justin, he was waived by the Niners after week 1, and the Giants claimed him on September 16th. Fun fact, I know you're going to hit me with the fun fact about Kaden Smith, but fun fact, do you know that supposedly Darius Slayton, who was picked at 171, the Giants were battling between Darius Slayton and Kaden Smith, and Slayton was the pick, which was the right pick, but they ended up getting their guy in Kaden Smith too.
Don't you love just when things work out?
I love when a plan comes together.
Do you want me to share my fun fact? Is that what the
Fun
silence
fact.
is? All right, fun fact. Yes. In 2018,
how fun this really is.
In 2018, Kaden Smith was hanging out with Justin Bieber, having a conversation poolside. He was vacationing with this family in Hawaii, and him and the Biebs, they chatted it up a bit. I think there were some Instagram pictures that he snagged, and Kaden Smith actually put it up on his Instagram. Bobby, what do you think that conversation was like between Kaden Smith and Justin Bieber? How do you think it went?
Were they actually hanging out, or did they just take pictures?
It's kind of weird because the pictures look like they're paparazzi pictures. It's not like they're posing where the arms around one another and they're throwing up a peace sign, they're throwing up a thumbs up, nothing. It's just they were chatting.
Maybe Bieber is a big Stanford football fan.
Who knows?
Or he's just like, hey man, Stanford is tight end you. Or, you guys are good stuff. I mean, we have another Stanford tight end on the team in Levine Toilolo.
Oh, he does live in California, so who knows?
That could be what it is. He actually met Eli Manning. When Eli retired, he had a picture with Eli Manning of when he was a young lad. Did you know that about
Justin
Smith?
Justin Bieber?
No, Kaden Smith. Jason Bieber probably wish he could have, but he didn't have that ability.
You just said Jason Bieber, by the way.
I said Justin. That's what I said. All right, let's get into it. Who he is as a player. Justin, at Stanford, in his senior year, he averages 70.5 yards per game. That's pretty good for a tight end, especially in a Stanford team that likes to run the ball, establish the run, just like you love. Justin, in 2019 with the Giants, he had 7 real games played. He had 9 total, but they were like 10 rep games. In those 7 games, he had 31 catches, 268 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A 73.8% catch per target rate, which is really good for a guy who was involved in the game plan. At a 16-game rate, that's 71 catches. That's really good. 1,613 yards, 7 touchdowns. So the yards per catch isn't great. It's like around 8 or so.
We'll talk about that.
Per game, it was at 4.43 catches, 38.29 yards. He also had a 1-catch, 1-yard game in there. Justin, we didn't really know who this guy was. Evan Engram's out for the Jets game. We're expecting Rhett Ellison to start, and the Giants announced that they're starting Kaden Smith. Now, he played 50-50 snaps with Rhett Ellison in that game, and from then on, after that game, Kaden Smith was introduced to our lives.
Yeah, Kaden Smith really was a breath of fresh air before you even get into any numbers and before I get into numbers. And I think my evaluation and my analysis of Kaden Smith's 2019 numbers is going to be a combination of I kind of don't like Pat Shurmur in the way that he used tight ends, but it's also maybe I'm going to have the take of Kaden Smith doesn't overly excite me because I know a lot of people are very excited about Kaden Smith. So, Bobby, I feel like that'll be good banter. But no matter what, let's just look at what the 2019 season as a whole. Kaden Smith was a breath of fresh air compared to Rhett Ellison. And especially with, we always come to a point in a season where Evan Engram is not the starting tight end and he's just not a guy that's relied upon compared to what we've had, the past 2 years with Ellison. Kaden Smith was a breath of fresh air, and he actually was someone who was a strength for the team and not somebody who was out there just running routes.
Yeah. After watching, I went and watched a couple of games of film to refresh myself, and I was very excited. Do you have any like numbers on Kaden Smith?
Yeah, and there's not that much because there's just such a low sample size with him, and why I think the catch rate was so high, Bobby, and this even goes to what we were talking about with Sterling Shepard as well, with catch percentage, you have a high catch percentage, so it's more likely that your average depth of target, it's not that much. So Kaden Smith, actually, his average depth of target, where he was targeted on the football field, was 5.7 last year. That's not great. That's not great. That you're almost getting to a point where you might as well even just run the ball. And the way that you saw that Pat Shermer was using his tight ends, very, very rudimentary, very elementary routes. A lot of times they're check downs. A lot of times they're just running button hooks and stuff like that. Wasn't really great. And you even saw a guy like Evan Engram, his efficiency numbers dropped tremendously in 2019, even compared to 2018 as well. And actually, Jason Witten, a little shocker of a fact that I found, because I'm trying to compare Witten to Kaden Smith. I think that's just a natural thing that all Giants fans are going to want to do. Jason Witten in 2019, his average depth of target was an entire yard greater than Kaden Smith. Now, average depth of target is more or less like a scheming stat. I don't really think that's a player performance stat, because it's where are you catching the ball on the field, and that's play calling. What routes are you running? But even Jason Witten was getting a lot more like yard in terms of his yards per reception, getting that a little bit more than Kaden Smith.
Right. I'll say this, and I'll just start talking about him as a player. One, I think it's a funny thing, and I've noticed that if you're a backup white tight end, people are like, "Oh, good blocker." He struggled to start, but he really improved. And this is a guy who wasn't part of this team in camp. He was the four-string tight end for the 49ers. He wasn't a part of this team in camp, and his blocking got better. It struggled at the start, and then I watched the Green Bay game, and he was annoying the crap out of Zadarius Smith. I really get annoying him. And I remember I did a breakdown of one of his blocks in that game. He blocked his ass off in that game, and it was so impressive. I mean, it was better than freaking Nate Solder. So his blocking improved. So we should only expect that to get better as you get stronger and more as a man in the NFL. So that is a big thing against him. Justin, it's hard to tell when you don't know the scheme, but it just seems like he's smart. When I was watching film, it looked like he'd see a middle linebacker pop out, and Kayden said, curl, stop right there in the middle of the hole. And that works with Jones. And it kind of looked like watching some Jones college tape with the way he used number 87 down there. I think his last name was Swain, the tight end there. And like you said, it's not average. It's not long, big receptions, but it seemed like it was there. But we also saw the bigger receptions against Philly, Green Bay. Like he also did have some bigger plays.
Yeah, and let me say that with that, Bobby, there were a few plays last year where Kaden Smith was making some catches in traffic, and he was receiving some big hits on the other end of catching that football, and he held on to most of those balls. He did a really good job. So that was something that I saw from the film as well.
Yeah, and I remember I put it in slow-mo. And it was the Miami game with Eli's quarterback.
Yes,
and it's down
the seam
route, and it was a down the seam, or it was like a skinny or like you said, a seam route, and the guy jams him up like 15 yards. He gets out of that break and then turns his eye. The ball is there, and it was there. It was like perfect timing. And what's crazy is those guys had played together for a week. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like he'd been working with Eli all year. He was working with them for a whole week. And I know the yards per reception aren't great, but Justin, I mean, I know you can't cut out stats, but the first game with the Jets, 1 catch, 1 yard.
Yeah.
The Bears game, which he did catch a touchdown, 5 catches, 17 yards. After that, 6 for 70, 2 for 9 against Philly with Eli, 3 for 38 with Miami, 6 for 35 and 2 touchdowns against Washington. And then the Eagles game, the 8 for 98. So it got better as it went along. I know like people make the Jason Witten comparison, but I really think it's true, man, because I think he's a smart player. His blocking is getting better. And if I know it comes down to this with all these guys, but if he's a hard worker, my expectations are like a very solid player and someone who could make Engram, like if Engram goes down this year, I'm not like it sucks, it bumps me out, but I'm not like it doesn't panic me, Like
it's not
I'm
the end of the world.
I'm almost like want to see again what he's like with the number one. As the number one guy.
Yeah, it's certainly not the end of the world. And where I think he's strongest when he's blocking Bobby is maybe not necessarily head-to-head and when he's head-to-head with somebody, but Pat Shurmur had him doing this thing where he was pulling across the line of scrimmage. He would be a tight end, and then he's taken off the last guy, the last guy of defense on the other end of the line of scrimmage, and he's taken out that guy. I really liked him in that role. He was very, very reliable. I think even there was a big Saquon run against Washington where Kaden Smith put up a really good block. So that's in there too. Bobby, can we kind of turn to? I know we're not a projection pod, and this isn't like our PPPs. We're not projecting anything.
I mean, it's literally player profiles and projections, so we are projecting.
But no. We're doing preview, player profile preview, talking Yanks' player profile projection. But I kind of want to turn it into projection here because I'm remembering Martellus Bennett.
We've always called them projections, by the way.
You say preview. I swear to everything that is good in this world that you have always said preview. But neither here nor there. I'm looking at Martellus Bennett, and I'm looking at his 2010 season. Now, in 2010, you also had Jason Witten collecting 128 targets, 94 catches, and over 1,000 yards. So, if anything, we're in a perfect world. Are we not envisioning Evan Engram as tight end number 1 for 16 games and Kaden Smith tight end number 2 for 16 games? I think that is the perfect world that we're envisioning. And what Martellus Bennett did in 2010 was 33 receptions on 47 targets. That's around a 70% catch rate, 260 yards, no touchdowns, but around 8 yards per reception. So, frankly, Bobby, I hate to be like this, not anti-Kayden Smith right now, but if everything goes correctly for this Giants team, Kayden Smith is really only getting, I'm really feeling 40 catches, 35 catches tops in that
good
range.
For a backup tight end, though.
Yeah.
That's not bad. You're saying that like it's negative. I think that's awesome.
But I think we're projecting, I think a lot of Giants fans are projecting Kayden Smith to be almost like a tight end 1, which he will be if Evan Engram goes down. But there's nothing like, and you might even agree with me about this, Bobby, there's nothing about Kayden Smith's game that overtly excites me. But he's solid. I think he's an good,
intelligent player. He's not going to burn anyone. Like, he's not fast. That's what stops him. But we've also seen in the past that it's not always the most explosive tight ends that do the best. Like, sometimes they burn themselves out of a route. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, I'm not like Evan Engram's a playmaker. I'm not poo-pooing Engram for his speed. Like, it is a game changer having that speed at tight end. But if you can be like, I know we keep comparing him to Witten, but look at Witten, and I think that actually isn't as far-fetched of a theory as I thought when we first started talking about him. So if he's the backup, obviously, but he's solid if Evan Engram goes down. Now, I do think he's going to get some playing time, and I think they're going to put him out there with Levine Toilolo with a healthy Evan Engram. Hell, they might even, bring 3 tight ends out or something.
Love that.
And then just split Engram out to the slot or move him around in motion and then have a 2 tight end set where you have Levine Toilolo, who's a really good blocker, Kayden, who was an adequate blocker and got better as the season went along. And then you can do some real tight end sets where, you said you don't want, like, he's not his best as a straight-up blocker. Well, kind of nobody is. But he was capable. Like, he went against 2 Green Bay edges who changed that defense and held his own against those guys.
Yeah, so you kind of transitioned a point that I also wanted to bring up where, yes, I'm trying to provide a good balance about Bobby's kind of enthusiastic about Kayden Smith. I'm trying to be like, hey, I'm trying to bring it down a little bit and bring us down to reality about, and I know Giants fans are celebrating him a little too much, but it will be criminal. It will absolutely be criminal if him, and I don't know if we have a Toilolo PPP, but I guess we'll talk about it eventually. It will be criminal if he is underutilized, especially on first and second down. If it's a rushing down and he is underutilized and then Daniel Jones doesn't have that option to maybe audible out of something and maybe audible to a passing play and then have that option of Kaden Smith, maybe Levine Toilolo. I would love to see some 12 personnel packages of just those 2 tight ends and Evan Engram is on the sideline for some first downs. I want to see that. I want him utilized.
Well, think about it this way. You have Evan Engram, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton. Any one of those guys goes down, it increases Kayden Smith's role exponentially because we don't have a 4th wide receiver we have a lot of trust in. So that means more 2 tight end sets. So Anything closing on Kaden Smith before we move over to the defense?
I think I have a theory about how these tight ends are going to be used in Air Coryell, because I think this is just important to bring up.
All right, quick go. 30 seconds.
Quick go. Okay. So Eric Coryell, the whole point is that your eyes and the quarterback's eyes, they're starting down the field. They're starting to look at their options down the field with their wide receivers. And I think partially why Jason Witten was so successful all those years is because your eyes are working back to your intermediate routes that are shorter and that are closer to the line of scrimmage. So there you go. Jason Witten was available for his button hooks. He was available for his out routes and things like that. And that's why I think our tight ends are going to be very successful this season, Kayden Smith included.
With 2 seconds to spare. All right, let's take a break and move the defense.